Welcome to DT Vector, the podcast where we explore the people, the technologies, and ideas that are shaping the future of the built world. Today's guest is a true global connector. From journalism to real estate leadership, from Silicon Valley to Africa's emerging PropTech markets, she is a founder of the Silicon Valley PropTech Association and the driving force behind innovative real estate projects all around the world, even in Europe, US, Africa, and Asia as well. Please welcome Alina Aeby. Welcome, Alina, to our show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I am very honored, and thank you so much for the kind words. I wasn't sure who you were talking about for a moment, but thank you anyway. And maybe one thing that probably we should also mention is that everything started in Romania, that I am originally from Romania. And sometimes it's a dream that came through to be able to do so many things at the global level. And I think it could give hope to everyone who was born in any part of the world, especially under the circumstances that I was and we were. And thank you for having me again.
Please tell us more about let's say, about the American dream. You started from Romania and now you're in the US. You have a fantastic career, and even the description doesn't tell the whole story because it's much more behind that. If you can make a summary of that story from Romania to United States, that would be great.
I will try to do it, and I will try to not be too long. So the American dream was an accident for me. I wasn't planning for it, and I wasn't necessarily looking at the United States as that place where I could come and accomplish my dream. I'm a result of the, in both professional formation and personal of the post-communist years of 90s. I was one of those first generations who graduated high school exactly after the revolution that toppled communism in Romania in 1989. For context, for your audience, and we had to learn everything. We had to learn the transition from a centralized to capitalist markets, a transition to democracy, a transition to involvement in a civil society. That was something that did not exist, as you know, when you are younger than me, for sure. But that this gives away my age, but that's fine. I think that it's part of my trajectory and my history, right? And I think I had contact, and I started to work for different corporations, like many young graduates, Romanians in my generation. We had more and more companies who came to Romania, and they opened offices, and I got to work for big companies like Maersk and Motorola. And eventually, I started to work for this very large children nonprofit organization as a PR and fundraising director. Fundraising was also something new for Romania in the 90s, and not easy to do because we didn't know how to do it, and there is a professional way to do PR and to manage nonprofits as well. And we were learning. And I was based in Oregon. I started to work for them. It was a very fulfilling position for me, just because I was exposed to a different aspect of nonprofits, coming from journalism and then corporate world. And I realized that professional managing and involvement is needed in nonprofit as well. And I had a chance to travel in Asia with them. They had branches and offices everywhere. And Romania at the time, it was a little sad because we had the highest number of HIV infected children in Europe because of medical mistakes. And also, we had the tragic inheritance, social inheritance of orphanages. And you could see that all over Euronews and international news. It didn't look very good, and indeed was a problem that needed to be tackled at the time. And we had these different programs that I had to represent and work with media, organize events, and raise funds as well. And because it was an US based organization, I had the chance to work with different US institutions and global institutions as well. I was exposed to that. And somehow I arrived in the US, but it was not intended necessarily. And I arrived in San Francisco exactly in the middle of the dot-com crisis. That was 2001. That means that a lot of companies were closing every single day. And people were telling me, oh, if you would have been here a year or two ago or five, in the middle of it all, of crazy valuations, not substantiated, of course, because at that time a lot of companies had crazy valuations and that they were not substantiated. You could find so easily so many jobs, and now it's very difficult. So when you arrive in that situation, when things are shuffling and changing, you have to create your own job, right? So what are you going to do? So one of the first things I did was to start a import-export company because I wanted to bring Romanian artists into the US. So I was working with two pottery artists that I found at some fair in Romania, and I exported that, imported that into the US, and I went to some fairs and eventually sold all my inventory to interior designers and specialty design stores and so on and so forth. It wasn't a big margin of profit, but it was an experience for sure. And I did a little bit of research after I finished my PhD. I finished my PhD in Romania, actually. Uh, and
In what domain?
it's in economics with emphasis in globalization. And one of my first projects was for a biotech company here in the Bay Area. And I did a research on Indian healthcare market because this company was making this semi-automatic machines, if you'd like, or instruments. They were portable and they could go and, just taking blood samples or taking different testing. They were not the most top of the line. They were not fully automated. They were semi-automated. So they had a huge market in China, and then they were looking at distributors and partnerships in India. And for that, you needed to know how the healthcare market works. So I did that actually. And it was like a half a year project, and it was great. But I didn't think I wanted to work in research or to do that. Also, at the time, it was a big demand, especially at the State Department here and the Trade Department, of people speaking Russian and also speaking Vietnamese or Chinese, just because it was a new wave of migration from these countries, and and because the economic relationships were such, so they were just needing specialists for different parts of the world as well. So I was just looking at that as well, if I should work for the Trade Department, for example. And eventually, all that research and looking for something led me to real estate, which was very unlikely. I never thought that I would do real estate. I've never done real estate in Romania, but it was so different here. And it was licensed, and I admired the professionals and the realtors I met at the open houses. I went through the process myself. My husband is American, and we went through that process, and I thought this is a very interesting area of expertise, and it could be very complex. And then you get involved into it, and you realize that it's more to it, that it's so vast and it's so complex, and it has so many verticals, and it solves so many problems, and it has so many problems at the same time.
And before we'll talk more about the technology part, the prop tech part, I'm curious. Okay, you're a licensed real estate broker for over 15 years, and you traveled all over the world with the real estate part. How is that? Is this job different on, let's say, maybe in different areas in US different on different continents, on different areas around the globe?
They are big differences because very few countries have licensing for this profession. In a lot of countries, this is registered as a general business profession, including in Romania. There is no licensing from on the government side or association side. People and different professions organize themselves in a in associations so they can do continuous education, they networking, or sometimes they have even a exchange listing data in place. But in most of the countries, this is not a regulated profession at all. Actually, in most of the world, probably more than half, excluding Western Europe and of course United States where it's regulated. You could wake up in the morning and just decide that you want to be a real estate agent and you can act as such. And there is not much protection for the consumer, but also for the people who want to practice this properly either. So I would say that's a lot more work to do into it. On the other hand, even in the United States, you will hear often that people think that real estate agents are overpaid, that is not enough education because you don't actually need a college degree to be a real estate agent or a real estate broker. But if you are going, for example, in California for a real estate broker license, you do need to have college level courses. And if you do have education in that field, you will have equivalence of that when they give you the real estate broker, credits. But you still have to take an exam. It's a state exam. Every state in the United States has different laws and a different license. I'm licensed in California. I can practice in Florida or in New York, for example. So you need to take the exam and go through the requirements for each state because there are differences in the way it's practiced. But this being said, I been working in San Francisco. It's a highly educated market. There are very few real estate agents who don't come from other field or other profession. Most of them are highly educated. They have law degrees, engineering degrees. They are CPAs, and they are actually knowledges, previous knowledges, and other certifications that they will enhance what they're doing and what they're offering to consumers. So the standards are pretty high.
And from a professional point of view, what do you think one trend in today's real estate market that most people are underestimating?
I'm not going to say AI, or I could say AI because everybody's talking about it. So, yes, I think like in every profession, everybody is concerned about automation and AI taking their jobs. Although I think that it's possible up to a certain point, it will be able to automate some tasks that they are repetitive. And I had the chance to make a presentation 2 weeks ago to campus who I'm associated with event, and we were talking about AI in real estate and for real estate agents, that it's becoming beyond prompting and beyond helping you to write a description of the property. It's becoming a lot more. It could become a trusted partner, business partner, even for a real estate agent, because this is a business. And when you, for example, take on a real estate listing, it's a project, right? You have to start from procuring all sorts of contractor bids to bring everybody together and to bring the product to the market. And you could have a AI and a real, people team in the same time, uh, an agentic team, an agentic AI team. This is what you could have. And I think that this is a challenge. There will be a lot of jobs that they will disappear. They will be replaced with something else. But I think that the future will belong to the real estate professionals who know how to use the technology and AI.
You founded the Silicon Valley PropTech Association. From where this approach, or you like the technology part, the software part, How did that come?
Maybe we should start first with my first step from a local market to the global markets, because most of the time you will hear that real estate is local, right? Everybody will talk about that. We just talked about the fact that I'm not licensed to sell real estate in Florida or somewhere else in the world, and people will always ask you, oh, if you want to list a property in Romania or in Italy or in Spain, how can you do that? You are not licensed. Of course, it's not always a requirement for license, but I think it's a requirement for professionalism and common sense, because you need to know those markets. And first, I started to get involved in global real estate. I signed up as a member of the International Real Estate Federation, FIAPSI, which is the oldest international real estate federation in the world. It's headquartered in Paris, and it was started after the Second World War II to tackle and solve, together with UN, the housing shortage problem. That was obviously a big one after the war and after every war. And that it's the only federation that includes all vertical of real estate, from architecture to academia to real estate brokerages, developers, so on and so forth. And I went to the first meeting in DC in 2014, and I was hooked. I thought, okay, this is my place. This is what I was looking for. I'm interested in so many different aspects of the real estate, not just the final product and selling, but all the journey, all the legislation, everything that it's important, and what makes this such an important sector of any economy in the world, right? And the basic rights of having a house. And that connection and the people that I met then led me to yet another important thing, which was becoming a liaison between the National Association of Realtors in the US and Romania at the time. Because the lady who was having that position, she was turning out, and she already opened the doors and did a lot of things. One of the things that they were so important to me, and they started my global entrepreneurship journey, were actually going back to Romania. So after I joined the International Real Estate Federation, headquartered in Paris, I had the chance to be offered this position, which was honorary. So that means volunteering for your profession. You have this position, it's an ambassadorial honorary position. And because the real estate profession is so diverse here, and there are people from all over the world, some of them want to connect back to their countries to give back. I had the chance to be at the moment the president of National Association of Realtors liaison with Romania. And I was very surprised, because I had no idea what's happening in Romania and what it is, to know that Romania had one of the best organized real estate association in the world, actually, although it was new, and also a multiple listing service for the agents to exchange proper listings in exclusive representation at the time. So I got to know for the first time, because I was not involved before, the real estate community in Romania. The association is not very large, because not all the people who are active on the market want to be part of a organization and to continue education and do these things. But the ones who do, they are wonderful. They volunteer for their profession. They do a lot for the association, and those are actually the people who I wanted to meet, first and foremost. So I started to come more often to Romania. And then after a while, Moldova joined, and Romanians actually helped Moldovans to organize themselves after the Romanian system. And I represented 2 countries. And then those 2 countries became 3, because Georgia signed as well. And they started to form a great partnership. And my goal during the pandemic, when the pandemic started in 2020, I had this position representing these 3 countries. And I thought, okay, we're all stuck here, and what can we do, and what kind of programs we can do to familiarize the real estate community here and the public with these 3 countries, how we can package them together and do some program for them. So I came up with this idea to present them as the emerging countries and economies at the Black Sea. Because, okay, Eastern Europe is big, but people think at Eastern Europe as being Russia, as being Hungary, as being Bulgaria. And we are also pointed as being part of the Balkans or also Eastern Europe, but we are at the Black Sea. And yes, Moldova is not exactly at the Black Sea right now, but through proxy it is. So I thought, okay, what makes this country special? Romania being the biggest, it's emerging tech, wine, and hospitality, because they all produce wine and they have a thriving tech sector. Actually, you see that a lot. And, you know, and they're very hospitable. They have a great potential in the tourism industry. And actually, Georgia has a lot of tourism, actually, probably more than all three countries together. I thought, let's just combine them somehow and give them a voice and present them as countries, and also the real estate industry sector. And considering the nomad visas at the time, it was a good, and Georgia having a very strong one, then I thought that would be a good opportunity for the Americans who would like to move in any of these countries to consider them and invest in real estate or rent or whatever, but just settle there for a while and get to know this part of the world. Those are the things I had in mind all the time. And then a step further for me was when I was offered the position of coordinating the relationships with 24 countries, and that was all Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And in that position, I concentrated on growing the relationships with Africa, which brought me to what we're going to discuss a little bit later, where I am today. And while doing that, I got very involved in technology, noticing the differences, things that we were already using here. We've been using electronic signature since 2009 here. One of the first to use DocuSign and all sorts of technology products and systems. And that brought me to the importance of bridging the emerging real estate markets technologies with Silicon Valley and Asia Pacific, where I'm involved a lot as well, giving my geographical location as well, just because San Francisco has a lot of ties with Asia Pacific. Most of my clients are from that part of the world. So the connection became somehow natural.
There are a lot of stories to be told, but I'm very curious about what are you doing in Africa. Actually, I know a little bit, but for sure, it's for the rest of the people, for the ones that are looking to our podcast, they are wondering what is Alina doing there? What could be done in Africa in this perspective?
And in this sector, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think the rest of the world, Africa, and this is not just Africa, the entire world has a problem with housing shortage. And before talking about technologies such as managing Africa, but Southeast Asia has this problem a lot, and LATAM has this problem a lot. And the most important is securing that the property titles are real. So it's the fraud that you encounter at that level. You don't know what you buy. You cannot guarantee if that title is secure, that indeed the person who is selling it to you is the seller and has the right to sell it. And that is one of the most important things. So in this respect, the governments of a lot of African countries, they've done a lot of progress by first and foremost digitizing the real estate titles and in the cadastre and the national registry. And one of such countries is Uganda, where the government worked together with the World Bank, and it was a 10-year long project, and they digitized partially the real estate titles, probably in proportion of 40% or 50%, because the property ownership system it's a little bit more complicated and very different there. We're talking about tribes inside of the country, that they have their own property ownership system, and it's inherited from generations, and there are layers and layers of complexity. which is very interesting to know and to find out more about it. How I got there is that while having the chance to travel throughout the continent and meeting people and forging partnerships between the US and these countries, I met the right people. And if you ask me why there and why Uganda at the moment, East Africa, is because I met the right partners. They had the passion. They were people who worked a lot to build a community, a real estate community, and continue educations, educate the public, educate the real estate professionals in their country. And I got to meet them. We talked, and then we started a company together. We looked at solutions. We looked at solutions here in the US. We looked at solutions in Asia as well, in Singapore. Why? Because it's a similar British land system. And not everything that's coming from United States or from Western Europe, it's a plug and play, in for the African continent. Sometimes you need to build something from scratch. And we ended up, after looking at all sorts of data solutions and even MLSs in the US, building a platform, which is in MVP stage right now. It will be launched soon as an MVP, which will offer verified real-time listings market. This is what it is. It's a portal that will offer that, will be a dynamic market, a real-time market with verified property titles. We don't want anything that's not verified. That will eventually will match and will feed into the national title system, will offer security for the consumers and for the real estate professionals as well, and educate them. And ultimately would like to have a integration with the banks as well. And we will hope that will become a driving force in real estate data in East Africa and in Uganda. And our data will be very important and a decisive factor for taking important decisions like city planning, investments, just building new housing inventory projections, and all those things that they could be useful to different stakeholders in the Ugandan and East African ecosystem. We're building it at scale, so we should be able to implement it in other East African countries that they are English speaking and they have a similar land system. And has been a process. It's not necessarily easy, just because from funding to explaining the investors what we're doing and why it's important. But I have wonderful local partners and global partners. We're a global team, and everybody brings strength. And I'm very hopeful that this will change the way the real estate is market, real-time market is functioning in Uganda and East Africa.
And what are the, let's say, main challenges? Okay, the language, but I'm wondering, okay, looking from this part of the world, how many of Uganda people are using smartphones and so on? How are things there on the ground?
Actually, this is a very good question, a very interesting thing. And most people, when they hear that, oh, it's Africa, there are African countries, they don't realize that almost everybody uses cell phones. Actually, the landlines were not prevalent, but since the cellular telephony started, almost everybody has a smartphone, and the payment system is done through messaging. So this is actually something that we also have to integrate in our website, because we will have to do payment integration. And that, of course, credit cards are not used a lot, but is becoming less and less a cash society, because it's very easy for everyday person in Uganda, for example, to transfer money via text. And that is something that it's important to know. People like to use not necessarily apps, but whatever you create, the platforms have to be cell phone browser friendly. So they should be very easy to use. And people are moving a lot around. And I would say that the use of smart cells is good. What it's not great, and one of the challenges, is actually the internet penetration. The Wi-Fi is not something that works very well in all parts of the country, but it's still decent. The conversations could interrupt easily because of that. But the text is unfailable. It works and every time. That's why most of the fintech products built in Africa, they're heavily based on messaging, and they started with the telecom companies.
Mhm. And what are the other challenges somebody who wants to buy a house in that region has? And now I'm thinking maybe at financing that
Oh,
acquisition.
financing, this is what we hope that by what we are doing, they will hope ease the financial sector as well and the access to credit. Because as right now on the African continent, the percentage of the mortgages in the GDP is about 1%. It's a little bit more in Kenya, for example, 2%. It's more in South Africa, but by large, it's between 1 and 2%, and interest rates are very high. They're in double digits and they're unaffordable for most people. So when they do purchase homes, most of the time they have subsidies for different programs for first-time home buyers. And we hope that having proper data, and the biggest challenge being verification of title, making sure that you are buying a property with the proper title. If you do buy from a developer and it's a new construction, is a little bit easier. But if you want to buy something that's more complicated, such as land or resale properties, that it's something else. So if you will buy, for example, tribal land, then you need the approval of the tribal leadership, and it's a different kind of property. So we hope by having this live real-time portal, we can have a badge for absolutely all the properties to say exactly what kind of title is and what kind of ownership is. So people understand that and they understand the differences. We don't want to do the transactions on our own, but we would like to be the point of references and verification, the first point of verification for every investor and every buyer and seller and real estate professionals. This is our dream, this is our hope, and this is why we have the support of government and the association. And we've been endorsed to build that by the Minister of ICT, and that's a great honor to
Mhm.
have that support. You cannot just go in any country and not talk to all the stakeholders and find out what the problems are, what they would solve, and to come with a very localized solution.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, have you been in Uganda? Did
Of
you
course.
felt safe?
Oh yes, very safe. I've been to Uganda twice. I'm planning to go again this year. I already went there in April. We did a soft launch. It was mostly a stakeholders engagement event in Kampala in April, and we had the chance to have different lively discussions and panels with banking representatives and the association and government. And I'm planning to go again. It's a beautiful country. It's very safe. It's very touristy. It has a lot of natural beauty, from mountains, even glaciers, to gorilla trekking and national parks. It's a very beautiful country. Kampala is a very lively capital, although the traffic is a problem. That it's
It's
also
a problem
technology
because they
could
have a
solve
lot
that as
of
well.
cars, or
Traffic, yes, there are a lot of cars, and at 5 p.m., it's not easy to maneuver through Kampala. You could be stuck for a block or two in traffic. There are a lot of cars and therefore pollution. But it's a very hospitality-oriented country with a lot of revenue coming from tourism and from the agriculture. They export a lot, they grow a lot of cocoa, coffee, premium quality, and the fruit tastes amazing in Uganda. People are very friendly, and it's emerging as a with a lot of curiosity for technology, especially the new generation is very involved and interested in being part of this AI transformational period that we're going through, and not just AI digital. And I had the opportunity and the privilege to visit universities, research centers, and also business incubators and accelerators. And it was great to connect with the startup ecosystem as well, because we'd like to be in the middle of it, not just in the middle of the real estate community, but also being a tech startup, a prop tech, would like to be a part of innovation community as well.
Looking at your past, what you're doing right now, you love looking and exploring the emerging markets. Um, Regarding that, why should somebody look at Africa right now? That okay, maybe uh, they have a startup in prop tech or other area, and they should look at Africa.
Good question. Africa is growing more than Asia. The predictions for population growth in Africa, it's higher than for Asia. It has probably is the continent with the largest percentage of young population, which means it's the future that will ensure continuity in everything from ideas to innovation to applicability. And I do believe that it's time for Africa right now. There are a lot of digital innovations that they're needed. I think Africa has a chance right now to leapfrog based on all the existing global innovation and digital trends. And I think that the digital infrastructure can succeed where the traditional one failed. There are a lot of opportunities. I think that it's still a growing process. Maybe private equity, private capital investors are still questioning the way you invest in Africa and how it's going. I feel that right now, with the drying up of grants, Africa and African business culture is also transitioning from the grant mindset to actually private equity and private business mindset, and to the business plan writing and projections. And this is a great chance for everyone. It's a big market, it's a promising market. It's a market that could deliver incredible results, even for investors who are driven only by numbers. But there's still a market that will give you an enormous satisfaction, because there are a lot of things to solve still.
Mm-hmm. And what was for you the biggest cultural difference that didn't see before going there or working for them?
I think everywhere you go, you're gonna have differences, and you have to learn. You cannot go with the Romanian mentality, or in my case, with the US one, because I would say that at the time I left Romania, we didn't really have a Romanian style of business, right? We were modeled after others. We learned from Western Europe, we learned from US, of course, who coined a lot of terms even in startup world, because actually
And
startups are
from the
SMEs,
school
right?
of life also.
From the school of life. From the school of life is that you need to be patient. You need to wait for people. You need to learn the art of negotiation and the patience, really. You need to introduce yourself to different stakeholders and participants in the space. You need to listen to all of them. You need to listen to what they have to say. You also need to learn how to say no sometimes, and to prevent some objections. And in my case, I went there by forging partnerships, and we have a mixed local and international shareholders in our company. And I think that's important. I think another one is explaining to people that at the beginning, if you start an enterprise, you might not be able to pay yourself as a shareholder. And we need to work really hard to make it successful. And it's up to us to succeed. And I think that maybe that.
Mhm. And um, what do you think will? What's the timeline of development for your startup? Are you looking for financing? For finance? Are you talking to investors? You're financing that through work, through money. How is that part for you?
We are bootstrapped right now, and we do have a technology partner investors from Singapore who is building our platform, and we are very happy about that collaboration. We will be looking at funding very soon, but we didn't want to look for funding too soon. We have a lot of options. Obviously, we can also look for grants for the projects that we'd like to do. The verified portal is one piece of it. We're also looking at working with different large institutions to digitize their private property titles and to connect them with the national system as well. That is another project. But our first projects rolling out will be this platform that's called PropPulse. First, we were going to test it with about 100 users to see how it works. And we will start doing this month. And once we prove that, we'll deploy the MVP, then we'll be looking for funding. We're not going to look for crazy funding, but I've already started to talk with some investors here in the US, and we're looking at investors in Asia as well, and maybe some bigger institutions too for our educational part. Because our project is not just the technology platform, but it will also include and will imply a lot of education as well.
And what till now, as you discussed with them, what is their biggest concern?
We'll need funding, that's for sure, because if we get busy and we'll have a lot of activities, those servers need to be maintained. So yes, we need funding, and that is important. Execution is still a concern. Because it needs to be executed. I'm planning to spend more time there, but we have a team. I'm acting as a CEO. I have a COO, who is in Uganda, and the board, of course. So we have support. The deployment, the learning part, I would like it to be faster, and I don't know if it will be as fast as I would like. I think this is a concern for most investors when they go to Africa, is the scaling. The scaling is not happening as fast as somewhere else, just because it's the implementation and education piece, is the localization. It's something new that is established in a certain market, and because it's something new that was never done before, it's putting together all the pieces and doing a lot of education and a lot of collaboration. And I think that's probably what I don't know. It's an unknown piece. On the paper, the business plan looks feasible, that it's possible. Definitely is a market, is a big market. The East African market is a 100 billion market, is big. But again, the implementation, the how fast we can penetrate the market and we can scale. Those are things that I think any investor going into a different market, unknown market, but even in my local market, it could be the same problem.
When was your aha moment? When did you know that this idea would work?
Talking with my Ugandan partners, they were looking for a solution like that for years, and they tried the different things and they received different proposals. Actually, they haven't tried and implemented it, but they received different proposals from mostly US companies or Canadian companies, that they came with proposals to build them a certain platform which was based on the Western principles, on US principles, on Canadian principles, which are different to begin with, even from the West European ones. But they were definitely not going to work for an African market, which is untapped, and where you have most of the consumers, the public, selling their properties informally, sometimes without contracts, not registering, not paying property taxes at transfer of the property, so on and so forth. So they came to me and they said, hey, we will need that. You are doing prop tech. Can we find a solution for our market? They were ready and they've been looking for it. And it's something that they tried. They wrote all sorts of concept notes for the government, for the banks, and trying to do that collaboration with them. And we arrived at the conclusion, with me coming on board, that and with them, that it's good to have it as a private company, that they will have its own operations, will be run privately in a very market economy terms, but it will collaborate with all these stakeholders and with government and will do the integration. And then it's much better to have a private company which will be more dynamic and where the decisions will be faster to implement, that will offer that solution for government and make sure that they're up to date with recording titles and verification of the title. So we feel that the entire ecosystem right now, it's supporting this and is the right moment, because the government is also very interested in finding private sector partners that will address that problem.
You have looked to a lot of startups, to a lot of ideas. One that impressed you, something that you put your money on, some startup idea or a startup, maybe you know one that is underrated right now.
I don't know if I will give names, but in the prop tech space, when people think prop tech, they will just think at just few verticals of it. I think that there are so many needs, and I think every country is it's approaching the technology from different perspective and different direction. Um, Things that I'm very interested right now will be exactly this: preventing fraud and making sure that we find ways to use the technology to ensure and empower people to be homeowners and have that ownership certainty, because that it's very important. I find it a fundamental right and very important to all of us. I am very interested in that. I'm very interested in everything that's repurposing office buildings into the residential buildings, because it's a lot of need to do that. It's a very expensive way to do it, but I'm interested in all the technologies for tackling that use of space, and they can make it easier to avoid errors of planning and also reduce costs with that. And there are a few companies who are very good in Romania doing that. And technology can be used in so many ways. It depends. You can be used it efficiently in selling real estate, in tokenization. I feel that sometimes, especially in the US, if you are a known founder and if you have a good business model and you did an exit before, you receive a exorbitant amount of money, sometimes insane amount of money. And maybe the second idea or third idea is not as good as the first one, right? Maybe even not the first idea was great. Maybe a big company, like a big giant, I'm not going to name any names here, bought you and they're not even using your system efficiently because they want to kill you and use their own system, right? Sometimes it happens that a lot. It's a lot of buzz around a lot of people. And I feel that it's a little unfair, because when you come here in the US, and I go in different circles, I go to a lot of tech events in Silicon Valley, and you tell people that, look, I'm doing this in Africa right now. First, they look at you because they don't have any information about it and there is no education about it. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what the Ugandan government is doing. They don't know the efforts that they are putting into this. And they look at you and you say, hey, I don't even need that much money. I might need 100,000 or 200,000. Sometimes amounts that they are very small comparing with how much money are thrown here, especially in Silicon Valley, will go such a long way, and you will have a much longer runaway in a country like Uganda, and you'll actually be able to build something, and you have the numbers to prove it. Of course, there is a risk. You don't know if you're gonna execute those numbers. It's the same everywhere. I've seen companies here in Silicon Valley that they received an obscene amount of money and the model was not that good, and they folded in 2 years and nobody cared and everybody wrote off their losses. So here I'm just trying to explain people really hard that yes, we are worth it. Invest in us. It's important. So by this account, I will say maybe even our company is underrated. We have to convince investors that yes, we can make a difference and we can also make a profit.
Yeah, looking back at on the, let's say, on the what you're doing day to day, have you seen in the, let's say, this year, the past year, changes in the number of transaction that you're doing? How is the market in US right now?
The market, we are used with a market that has grown a lot, especially during the pandemic and before, sometimes even in double digits or close to double digits. For the first time now, the appreciation is modest. It's about 1 or 2% nationally, which is not a lot. We have had a lot less inventory. Why? Just because a lot of sellers locked in incredibly low interest rates during the pandemic years. They locked in 2 or 3% interest rates. And one of a sudden, as interest rates jumped to close to 7, and that is something that the new generation of buyers and sellers are not used to. Unlike, I understand, maybe our parents' generation, but here in the States, they had to buy in the 80s with interest rates, they were in double digits and they didn't think that it was anything out of ordinary. But now I think everybody has been spoiled with this low interest rates, not just in the US, but in Europe as well, all across Europe. And not only. And the fact that the interest rates were so high prevented sellers to put properties on the market. It slowed down moving around. People were not as mobile in the last 3 years as they were before, not as easy to pack, sell, and move to another state or another country. On the other hand, I'm here in Silicon Valley. We started to see IPOs again. For the first time, we had a big fintech company IPOing, and more will follow probably. We haven't seen that since the pandemic years. And we always try to think and to tie this expansions of AI led to more increased commercial leasing space because the commercial real estate market suffered a lot in San Francisco, for example, and even in Silicon Valley. And now a lot of companies are asking employees to come back to office, which will also affect positively the real estate, the residential real estate market as well. There will be more people who would like to buy or rent. The rental market is up in San Francisco, the residential one. So the prices are up again. They suffered for the last few days, but now is recovering. And it will be more inventory on the market as well. And we are waiting with interest the new Fed meeting in September to see if the interest rates will go down. I think that will lead to a new wave of confidence in real estate market for buyers and sellers.
You are seeing a lot of properties. You know what the buyers are demanding. If you could add one feature to turn a good home into an unforgettable one for the buyers, what would it be?
The kitchen still remains the soul of the house. It's always good to have a good kitchen. If you want to invest in anything, kitchen would be a good idea to start. Bathrooms are also very important. I feel that a lot of home buyers are looking for turnkey homes because it became more and more expensive and cumbersome to tackle projects that they require renovation, and not a lot of people want to do that. But if you'd like to invest in something, then pay attention to the kitchen. Make sure that the house is freshly painted when you place it on the market, then you don't have clutter. And we use a lot of staging here. If it's possible, try to present the property like a product and depersonalize it so it could appeal to as many people as possible. Even in Romania, I know a lot of my colleagues. I'm sorry, but I'm human and I have a little doggy which is barking right now. Going back to that, even in Romania, I appreciate a lot of my colleagues in real estate field because they use professional staging right now, which is specialized services of decorating a property that comes on a market. So you see that more and more. We use that all the time in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco. Almost we don't put properties on the market without being staged. It makes sense to to give everyone the sense of space by placing furniture than photographing an empty home. And speaking of technology, if you cannot do that, and if you don't have the budget for it because it's expensive, then try to do virtual staging. There are a lot of prop tech companies right now. You come in, take photographies of the empty rooms and empty homes, and then you can artfully place the right furniture that will match the style of the home by virtual staging. We did that a lot during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, because it was very difficult to place actual staging. And it works very well. It gives everyone the sense of space. And yeah, that's what I recommend.
And because we're near to the end of our discussion, one big advice you would give to your younger self?
That I would say be more patient, listen more to what other people would like or to do. Many times we come in a little arrogant and we think that we know everything. But I would have to say that it's so important for me at this age to know how the younger generation or another generation thinks and approaches different tasks is very important. I think multi-generational communication it's important. You can learn from everyone. And I truly believe even in having friends in all generations. But I would say patience, and more to others, and adaptability. But this is something that I think that it's one of my strengths, adaptability. I'm adaptable. Um, but sometimes I wish that I didn't rush that much, and I listen more, and I had more patience.
That's great. And one advice for us, for our audience, and for our future seasons episodes of Data Vector, who in the industry do you admire, and who would you recommend to have as a guest at this talk show podcast?
Because you were mentioning that, and then maybe you should have someone from Africa if you haven't had someone from Africa that's making a difference. I think that I will recommend you somebody from Uganda or from Nigeria, where I have a lot of connections and I admire a lot of very dedicated professionals, and professionals who not only were in it to make money or because they saw the industry as a profitable one, but people who made a difference in the way things are, and the industry is practiced, and they made a difference to promote their countries and to change the perception and image around the world. And I admire Smaranda, who is actually my friend and I work with. I'm still very close to Romania and Eastern Europe, and Smaranda from PropTech Connect. And she actually introduced us, and I appreciate that very much. And I hope you did interview her. I'm sure you did, because she's
For now, we're working together. So at one point, who knows?
at
Maybe
one point.
yeah,
Yeah, at one point.
we'll do something together. But actually, with somebody from Africa and Uganda, it's an extraordinary idea. We'll follow up on that for sure.
And also Nigeria. Nigeria is a huge force in real estate and technology, and it's a big country, and it's just coming up and is emerging as one. Is emerging as one of the startup and ecosystems in Africa, and I think it's extremely important to look at those poles of new economy in Africa, because there are few. That's what I would recommend.
That's great. Alina, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights. You have a lot of stories to be told. Maybe we'll do more episodes in the future. Maybe after Prop Pulse. And
Yes, that will be the name of the platform, and I will let everybody know we will start promoting. We don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That's why we're taking our time to make sure that we do the right testing and we talk to everyone. But yes, this is how it's going to be called, PropPulse.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you once again for joining us. And for our listeners, I hope you had a great time and join us next time to talk about PropTech digital twins and to find such good stories as Alina shared with us. Until next time, I'm Eugen Ursu, and this is DT Vector, the platform that is connecting the dots of the built world. Thank you, and bye-bye.